All right. I think that everybody is through the waiting room and connected to the best of their ability. So we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexis Gossick. I am with the Technology Council of Central PA. Thanks very much for carving some time out this morning. I know it's busy. It's right after the holidays. It's Thursday morning at 8:30. I appreciate you taking the time to join us for our today's tax session with Dunlap Bennett and Ludwig. Thanks so much to Craig and Aaron and Tracy for joining us this morning from the DBL team. Excited to have them with us. Before we jump into things, I did want to give a shout out to our investors that are either on the call with us already or will be joining us at some point in time during today's call. Engine, Capital Blue Cross, and JMA Resources. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your support. If you are a representative of one of those companies, we appreciate you. And you are the reason that we can continue to do great and wonderful programs like these. I know that everybody didn't log in this morning to hear me yammer. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tracy, Aaron, and Craig so that they can take us away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. We're very excited to be here with you early on this cold central Pennsylvania morning. My name is Tracy Pearson, and I'm so grateful that we're here with our lead partners from our data data privacy and compliance practice at our firm. So who we are, and I apologize because I'm just trying to navigate through the slides. So our firm, Dunlap Bennett and Ludwig, we are global data privacy experts. What we like to do is develop compliance systems. We work with clients across all industries. So that's financial industry, health industry, whether you're a small business, a large business, and we have a lot of seasoned professionals on our team and focusing in data compliance and data security and compliance. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our partner, Craig Besnoy and Aaron Jackson, who are here. And I don't know, gentlemen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, I'm Craig Besnoy. I lead the privacy and data security team at DBL, and we really this pyramid that you see on the screen is some significance to us because this kind of shows the way that our philosophy goes with our clients about helping them to prevent risk, to detect risk, and then to respond when that risk should be breached or when an incident happens. So this is a pyramid, and we'll refer to this throughout the presentation. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, and hey, folks, it's so good to see all of you this morning. My name is Aaron Jackson. I'm another partner with Dunlap Bennett and Ludwig. I run our government and regulatory practice. We call it the impact practice because it focuses on investigations, crisis management, audits and compliance, government contracts, and international trade. And so I lead up that initiative for the firm, which means that Craig and I work hand in hand pretty much every day. We're like two peas in a pod, and we partner on quite a lot of cyber and data security issues that overlap the government sector as well as the corporate sector. So when Tracy talks about being guided by industry, our industry is very broad. We support healthcare, we support various IT and business interests, both large, very large, all the way down to small businesses. We do a lot of support of government agencies and support services. So we are a pretty dynamic group of attorneys ready to assist really with anything in these areas. So with that, I'll send it back over to you, Tracy, and it's so good to see everybody this morning.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. What Craig, I'm going to ask you this first question. What would you say is the biggest cybersecurity threat that are faced by technology companies today?
Well, because technology companies and companies in general hold so much data and information. The breach and theft of that data is really the biggest threat that companies face today. This unauthorized access can affect millions at once. It's not just the individual or the name or the email address that they get, but it's the connections that that email address has to the integrated network of information that your company has. Hackers, they can take this information, harvest it, and sell it on the dark web that could either commit fraud with it or exploit trade secrets that you may have. There's a number of different ways that these data breaches happen. Some of them that you've heard about before, probably ransomware attacks, social engineering and phishing, or even the Internet of Things are subject to data breaches. But I think the one that is most on the rise today is insider threats. And I think that, Aaron, can you talk a little bit more about what we're seeing in insider threats?
Yeah, happy to do that. But before I go in there, though, you talking about data breaches reminds me of just the real world implications of this on a day-to-day basis inside companies. I'll give you a perfect example, as Tracy and Craig both of you know. Just yesterday, our firm was attacked by two different threats. One phishing threat. And then one insider threat, not within the firm, but within our system. And so we had to identify that and rectify that, which just goes to show this happens every single day across the entire industry, all industries. The world is facing this issue, and it's incredibly prevalent. Not only right now, but it's going to continue to be a problem, and it's going to continue to be a larger problem. One of those problems that you mentioned was insider threats. Now, we have seen across the world a significant rise in insider threats over the past several years. I gave you some of the statistics right there. But before I get into that, it's important to understand, hey, what is an insider threat? I spent 25 years in federal government service in the Department of Defense. And so when I think of insider threat, generally I think of that physical threat that's posing a risk to infrastructure, to structures, to buildings, to locations. But in the cyber world, insider threats go far beyond that. And what we're talking about is anyone who has access to data that is in a position to put the company at risk. That's not just your insider employees. You might be thinking to yourself, well, my employees are wonderful people. I'm sure they are. They're all wonderful people. But that's clients, that's contractors, that's other companies, third parties that you're working with that have authorized access to your system. And the other thing that's important to note is it's not just intentional. These could be wonderful people, but they might be unintentionally putting your company at risk, your network at risk for something that they're doing that they don't even know that they're doing. And so that level of threat has created this huge rise in the insider threat. So again, you can see the statistics. Just last year, 83% of companies reported at least one insider attack, and that's being generous. Most companies are reporting hundreds of insider threats on an annual basis. And just look at what the cost of an insider threat is to a company. And this is an individual cost of in 2023 over $16 million that one insider threat costs on average to a standard size company. So as artificial intelligence increases, as our technology across the board increases, this insider threat issue is just going to be continue to be a key component of the data breach risks that companies face on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Thank you. And as far as we're going to kind of go back to that triangle that we talked about and how we our practice philosophy in terms of looking at the insider threat issue, what are some data breach prevention measures that companies can take to protect the very sensitive data that they have?
Well, Tracy, I think the most, the obvious one is limit access to that data, lock it down. Understand that the principle of least privilege, which is means that people have the least amount of access to data as possible. Even something like somebody like the CEO of the company, may not need to have access to accounting. Maybe the separation of duties means that the CEO wants to access accounting, they have to pick up the phone and call the accountant. That's the concept of the principle of least privilege. It doesn't, stop with the CEO. The entire organization needs to take a look at what kind of access that they have, and then implement those access rules through some type of device and access management system. If you're using, Office 365, it's built in. Some people use a variety of different tools to be able to grant access and permission to users. And the other piece to use is multi-factor authentication. So even if you've established that principle of least privilege, you've given and locked down access permissions through your infrastructure, having that last piece of multi-factor authentication, proving the person that's logging in is that person. That's really the most important thing that you can wind up doing. There's a couple of other things that you should also do besides locking down the data. Is you have to also understand where your data lives in order to lock it down. So doing a data risk assessment, understanding what data is being collected, where it's being stored, how it's being used, and how it's being accessed is a fundamental foundation of risk prevention in order to implement some of those data limiting policies. And then finally, what we recommend is that everybody double check their cyber insurance coverage. If you're relying on cyber insurance coverage that might be included in your general liability insurance, is probably not enough. Cyber insurance coverage can cover not only remediation, technical remediation, if you should have a breach, notification requirements that you have under state or federal law, but it also can enable you to use it for reputational damage, to be able to go out, hire a PR firm to correct reputational damage that you may have, as well as it can also cover for lost work. So if some type of data breach causes your firm to go down or to not be able to conduct business, cyber insurance can help cover those lost work days.
Thank you. And Craig, you may want to also this leads me into, once you have those risk prevention and preparedness strategies in place, so you have the system, what are the looking at the middle, the risk detection and management that companies should follow?
Yeah, I can take that one, Tracy.
Okay.
When we think about this pyramid, it's important that companies are thinking about how to leverage their inside policies and procedures to be able to respond to each level of the triangle that we've provided here. But it's also important to note, Craig, you mentioned several steps on prevention that triggered my mind to the fact that it's really important for companies to get attorneys in at the ground level, at that prevention and preparedness, into the risk detection and management, as well as the risk response and resiliency. It very commonly, and we'll get to this in just a little bit, but companies commonly will reach out to attorneys when it comes to risk response and resiliency. Something's happened, and now the world is on fire, and I need to call the attorney and see what I need to do. But companies that have begun to understand the process and the importance of bringing in attorneys early into the process really see a lot of return on that. The attorneys not only can help you in the response, but they can help you to develop those prevention and preparedness strategies that are important for your company. They can appropriately tailor this. Craig is a master at tailoring individual designs for companies for prevention and preparedness, as well as risk detection and management, all the way up to the risk response. The other
That's a
important
great
thing,
point, Aaron. That's a
yeah,
great point. Just wanted to step in that, really one of the things that really makes the attorney valuable is that all findings or actions that are taken during remediation or even the preparedness efforts are shielded from disclosure.
that's
So
it.
that proves to be very helpful if you have a scenario that involves a data breach or regulatory investigation or a compliance audit. All the information that you've been discovered or the efforts that you've done, if you do it through an attorney, comes under attorney-client privilege.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll
that's
just so everything as far as like pen testing, all of the, as you said, findings from the risk assessment, um, not having to disclose that can be a real game changer for companies who are part of investigation, audit, or lawsuit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the attorney-client privilege was exactly where I was going to go, Craig. So again, two peas in a pod. We think the same. Yeah, the ability to have the everything underneath the attorney-client privilege, that protective umbrella, is incredibly valuable for companies. Not only at the emergency response stages, but even earlier into that as well. Okay, let's go back to risk detection, because I did want to focus on three specific things with risk detection. There are lots of wonderful things that companies need to be thinking about at that prevention and preparedness foundational stage. But let's move on now. Okay, let's talk about the daily implementation of those policies and procedures that you put in place at the foundational level. Tracy, can you go back one slide so our folks can see? There are really three things I wanted to talk about. The first one is network monitoring. Now, this is the type of tools that you can use that literally just monitor network traffic for unusual patterns or perhaps unauthorized access attempts into your network. It's just this constant monitoring that will happen within your system. Incredibly important to implement that within your company's network. Endpoint detection focuses more specifically on those individual devices that might be the subject of a breach, and the ability to identify those devices, to kind of firewall them off in the event that there is some level of detection that there's been an attempted breach or an actual breach. You want to be able to identify and isolate those systems and be able to correct them at the individual level. The other one that I think is really important is the user behavior analytics. I'm not sure if folks are familiar with that one. This technology is continuing to get more and more advanced and robust as technology and AI increases. But what this allows the company to do is to monitor individual functions and behaviors in the network that can detect anomalies. Like if there are, it essentially develops a pattern of behavior on your network, and it begins to kind of monitor the status quo. So if it's seeing odd anomalies in the behavior on the network, it will flag that and report that to the appropriate individual. So if there is an individual or a department that normally operates in this kind of domain within the network, and then all of a sudden there's some odd efforts to access different files or to seek information in some other areas, it will detect that as an anomaly because this department or this individual normally doesn't operate in this way. So it allows a more robust monitoring of those behavioral things that take place, kind of given a standard set of algorithms or machine learning that's been put in place. It's an incredibly valuable system and service that's offered that will really help you ensure strong protection of the network.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. And so I think based on our time, we did have a great, we worked on a case last year that involved a global massive data breach. It was based on a cyber terrorism attack. As we just wanted to share a little bit about that, because as the U.S. attorneys handling that case, we had to contact everyone from FBI, forget the acronym, CISA, or the,
Oh, DISA.
oh,
Yeah.
yes. And all 50 states. So every state has a reporting requirement, which is how, there's just a lot of different laws and agencies that are involved. So we're going to move on, and
Yeah. I can take this slide, Tracy. So
great.
as you guys, as you know, as technologists, you're either part of the team that's building new data infrastructure or new applications, and where do we start to think about security and privacy is at the design stage before you even start to code. That should be part of the planning. So understanding about how intruders could get into your application, and then understand the data that you're collecting and how you're going to keep it private, making sure that privacy is in accordance with, and security is in accordance with regulatory authorities that you may have to adhere to, is super important. The other thing that we wind up doing is helping win that privacy security and privacy design by conducting a privacy impact assessment. And we go in and audit your application to make sure that the impact that application has on privacy is in accordance with government regulations. An example of this may be if you're designing an application focused on children, making sure that the way that you're gathering that information, holding that information, and using that information is in accordance with COPA, the Child Online Privacy Act. So that's an example of how we wind up conducting the impact assessment. But I think that we can go to the next slide. I think one of the things that's super important is that cybersecurity isn't a one-time thing. It's ongoing. So establishing your company with a cyber mindset is really important, and making sure that this is an ingrained from the time that people walk in the door. All of your vendors understand that this is something that you take extremely serious. And what that cyber mindset allows you to do is to not only help the cyber incidents that are happening now that you know about, but that cyber mindset allows an agile framework to be built within your organization that allows it to be flexible, so that that when a new intrusion happens or a new regulation is issued, it doesn't upset the apple cart, and people can flow just naturally with that, and to be able to make sure that resiliency is maintained in this environment of instability.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that very quickly, Craig. I know we're kind of running out of time here, but it really is. I can't overemphasize the importance of companies beginning to look at the cyber landscape as beyond just the risk response and resiliency sort of thing. The companies for the longest time, and I can understand why. There's budgetary concerns, and there's lots going on in the company. And so they have tended to approach things with if something lights on fire, then we'll call the firefighters. No, what we want to do is prevent the fires from ever happening. And we know in the cyber world, with the rise in risks and the monetary impact of data breaches today, that we're just beyond the point where we can just be responsive. We have to be prepared. Not only in how we respond to things, but the policies and procedures in place at every step, in that prevention step, in the detection step, as well as that response. And it's really important. One of the things that we have seen companies struggle with is understanding how to respond if and when something happens. Another thing that we can help with is creating those exercise types of scenarios that will allow companies to feel comfortable in how we are communicating and responding at every stage of the process. Incredibly, incredibly important to do that today. The more comfortable we can get with that, the more secure companies will feel, and the more prepared they will be at every stage. So,
Yeah, and that's really why our philosophy is to use compliance as a service, where it's not a one-time thing. So we can. This compliance as a service paradigm that we employ it used to be able to maintain within your budgetary constraints. So not everything has to be tackled all at once, but using a stepwise approach to your cyber and your personalized cyber journey is something that we advocate for, and that we have flexibility to be able to implement for you within your budgetary constraints. I don't know if we want to open it up for any questions.
And we're
Tracy?
happy. I will definitely share the slides with Alexis, and we'll pass along our contact information. We're happy. We all, I think, are very passionate about these topics, and happy to. It's been wonderful to meet everyone, and we're happy to follow up with questions.
Thank you so much, Tracy, Aaron, and Craig. We do have about 2 minutes left, so I want to give everybody an opportunity. If you have a question that you would like to add or ask to the larger group, now is your opportunity. I will send out a follow-up email after today's session with contact information. And Tracy, if you want to shoot over the slide deck, I'll make sure to attach that too. That's no problem. The recording of today's session will also be made available on TCCP's website, so that link will be included in the email. But let me be quiet for a minute and see if anybody has any questions. I always move too
Early.
quick. Yeah, and I always move too quick. And try to give the pregnant pause, but it is not my strength. Hearing nothing, I will move quickly to get the follow-up email out to everybody. So if you do have questions, or if you're kind of mulling something over and need some time to formulate the actual question, you'll have that time. Thank you again to Tracy and Aaron and Craig for joining us this morning. Thank you to everyone who dialed in this morning. And just my final plug, if you are looking for an opportunity to get out from behind a screen at some point in time in the near future, we do have our first TechNet networking event of 2025 scheduled for the 30th of this month. So less than 30 days away, we will be at Pursuit Co-working in Harrisburg for that TechNet. Registration is open. It is on the 30th from 5 to 7 p.m. It's a Thursday evening. We will have food, we will have cocktails, and we will have, hopefully, you. So if you're available, please go ahead and register. We'd love to see you. I hope that everyone has a great day today. Stay safe and stay warm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alexis. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.